Hey, welcome to another episode of the Dad's Making a Difference podcast. My name's Cam. I'm your host, and I'm having an extraordinary conversation with Chris Nastasi today. Chris is a devoted husband and father. He's also a former minor league baseball player and U.S. Army veteran. This is a high performing dude. This is a guy like you. This is a guy like me, a guy who's serious about his family, but also has lots of goals, lots of dreams, and he high performs. And today, Chris is going to share his incredible story of resilience and transformation from playing baseball to serving in the 1st Ranger Battalion. And now he is also helping high performing men like you and I with the complexities of balancing fatherhood and life, whether that's life outside the family and business, work, or whatever you're into outside of the home. In this episode, Chris is going to share his powerful journey of transitioning from military life to becoming a full-time dad and husband. He's going to share that he came back from deployment and went out for 50 days on the road with his family and what he learned from that experience. He's also going to share what he learned from experience as an Army Ranger, looking at a guy who didn't join the Army until he was 28 years old and shot his first gun in basic training. Chris is a fascinating dude, and he's going to offer practical strategies on how you can balance a high performing mentality and lifestyle with family responsibilities. Get ready to be inspired by Chris's insights and experiences as he reveals the steps that he successfully took that you can implement to transition from high performing man into high performing father. Chris really wants you to become a dad making a difference. This episode on the DMD podcast with Chris Nastasi starts right now. Chris, welcome to the Dad's Making a Difference podcast, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, Cam, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here and to be a part of this. So I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate every conversation that I get to have with a guy who's on a mission to help other men. And so I look forward to this. I look forward to you sharing your story. And I'm glad we're able to do this, man. Like we were just
Yeah.
talking before we press record that, you know, life events, weather events in your case are coming. And we
Yeah.
were worried we weren't going to be able to pull this off. So thanks for making it happen. And
Yeah.
yeah, man, we'll dive in. I know you got a young family. You are in the midst of really exciting work. But Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just so our listeners can get acquainted?
Sure, of course. So first and foremost, I am a husband and a father. I have a 4-year-old boy and a 2.5-year-old daughter. So, we're in it a little bit
Yeah.
still, but I'm enjoying it. Early years, played baseball. I played in college. I was fortunate enough to play in the minor leagues, but not affiliated to any team, just independent league. Great experience. Was fortunate enough to after that coach college baseball. And then at the ripe young age of 28, I joined the United States Army and turned 29 in basic training. And I spent my whole career in 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, Georgia, which is
Mhm.
a special operation unit and kind of tip of the spear type stuff. I enjoyed that. And I was fortunate enough also at the end of my career to spend some time at West Point, the United States Military Academy, to helping coach and you know mentor some of the younger cadets. I was enlisted, so they're officers, on what it's like to be kind of a leader and what it's like to make decisions without having all the information you're going to have, without with small time, and a lot of down regulation stuff as well, stress management, things like that. Um, my first job out of the Army, I worked for a company basically with performance
Mhm.
based on, high level executives, athletes, how to optimize them, whether it's work, family, etc. And we just moved from Montana to Maine in November of 23.
Yeah.
And on that trip, we decided, let's take our 4-year-old, who is then 3.5, and our 2-year-old, who is then 1, and
Yeah.
do a cross country trip for 50 days. And it was amazing. One of the greatest, but also most stressful trips I've ever had.
I imagine.
So that's a
Yeah.
long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, not long-winded at all. I'm gonna dive into, your ripe young age of 28. You had a lot of guys that I've talked to, some friends, some guests, past guests of this show, who've been in either the Army, the Marines, Air Force, whatever have you. They started right away. They started early. And you said at the ripe young age at 28, you joined the Army, which means you had some life experience before you made that decision. And it wasn't like a knee jerk thing out of high school. So I know you got to play baseball. You had a really cool experience. It sounds like playing up to minor leagues doing
Mhm.
that. But 28 seems late to get into the Army. What pushed you that direction?
Yeah, for sure. I was the old guy most of the time. So, but to at 18, I was like I walked into a recruiter. I wanted to go in at 18. I'm glad I didn't at the time. It was a Marine recruiter. Nothing against the Marines, but I'm glad I didn't go that route. My father at the time, he's like, "Hey man, you have a scholarship to play baseball. You can always come back to this."
Mhm.
So it was kind of like that. And then at 24, I tried to again. And my then girlfriend at the time, who is nowhere near the picture now, right? Maybe
Yeah.
probably even like a few months later, we broke up. She's like, "Hey, if you go, like, don't go," or something, like, talk me out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I would also say that as a man looking back now, I was asleep in my 20s. I was not the man or person that I even thought I could be moving forward. I wasn't ready. I wasn't mentally ready. I was a immature boy that looked like a man in my 20s. And so I don't know how it would have turned out for me if I had gone that early.
Mm.
And so at 28, I was coaching baseball. I was we were my wife and I we were just started dating. We were living together at the time, I think. So we were about a 6 months to a year into our relationship. And we were living in New York, close to the city, but on Long Island, where I grew up, where she grew up, where we grew up. And I'm coaching baseball, doing lessons, I'm bartending, doing some kind of construction work. And I woke up. I started reading some books. I read the book Spartan Up by the guy who created the Spartan races.
Understand?
And I kind of woke back up and was like, found that like primalness in me that was supposed to be there. I love my father. We connect really well through sports. That's our outdoors experience.
Yeah.
But I had never shot a gun until I joined the army. I I had we don't go outside much. We never went camping. We never went
Yeah.
hiking. It was we played sports outside, and that was pretty much my experience outside. And I, as a kid, fiend to be outside. I
Mm.
loved doing everything in the dirt, camping. Like if I could, I would sleep outside on my own. Like I was just that kind of kid. I loved to play manhunt in the dark. Like loved it. Like I was always the guy that snuck up on everybody. And and that went away in my late teens, early 20s. I like fell asleep. And this book was like a jump start. It was like a kickstart back to like what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I felt the calling to serve again, to go back to the service, for many reasons. One of them being to learn a lot of skills that I could take moving forward,
Yeah.
and a lot of them being that I can go do the job that I wanted to do.
Cool. And return to that call of, being outside, doing those hard things.
Yeah.
You talk about reading that book and it shaped the way that you were starting to look at the world.
Mhm.
What did you learn about yourself during that time where you're like, wait a second, I'm not where I want to be. I'm going to do this. I'm diving in. Your girlfriend at the time, your wife, and you make this decision to go back and join the army. What did you learn about yourself as a person going through that?
Yeah. So the first thing I learned is how to control my emotions a little better.
Mm.
I come from a Mediterranean family, Italian, Sicilian on one side, and Greek on the other. And I am basically second generation American. They came over after World War II.
Yeah.
Things get hot.
Family reunions a
It's
little
a little
emotional.
spicy, right? And to say the least, right? I during this awakening, right? I took a step back and I realized I was doing everything out of emotion.
Mm.
There was no like 30,000 foot view over like, hey, take a step back and is this a good decision? Or what are the repercussions of things that would happen if you did this or said this?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like coinciding with the book, coinciding at looking at how I was living and what the normal was, right? What normal looked like for me growing up, for my family, for my family at the time. And I was like, this is not what I want. This is not how I want to grow up. When I do get married and have children one day, if that's the path, that's not the foundation I want to set for those children. So you're looking, fast forwarding now, where that was like 12-ish years ago.
Yeah.
you know, to me, our words, the things that we say are just like shooting a gun, right? Once that round leaves the barrel, once the word comes out of our mouth, we own that. We're responsible for what happens
Mm.
downrange.
Mhm.
We're responsible for what happens behind that. We're responsible for what happens, maybe second, third order effect. And so that's kind of the starting point for me there. Obviously, as my career in the military went on, I made that correlation and I was like, oh, this is how I could see things.
Yeah. Wow. And how long did you spend in the army?
So just about 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
And deployments overseas and all of it?
Yep. Yep. Multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq,
All over,
Syria,
yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
And so during that time, when did you get married? Like, how did this all work out? Like, I'm trying to do the math in my head. We did a pre-call a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, 7 years ago, kids are this old. He's been married this long. Like, this wasn't I'm sorry, I'm not saying this. This wasn't like you would write it down on a calendar and plan it all out, was it? Like, what was
No,
the
I
time frame
mean,
here?
I met my wife in 2014. So we're on 10 years of being together.
Oh, congrats.
Um, I leave for basic training January of 2016.
Mm,
My wife is an absolute superstar.
yeah,
She is amazing. She's the greatest mother and wife I could ever in my wildest dreams ask for.
yeah.
Um, we were living together prior to me leaving, and I would have sworn that she was not going to be there after basic training. Like there's no like there's like that thing in you that's like, oh, there's no, this is too good to be true. Like those Dear John books, whatever, right?
Yeah.
To her credit, she has stuck through everything. She's so strong. She's so independent. She can do anything that she wants. That's the type of woman she is. And so get out of basic training. We were sending letters back and forth, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, I find out, and then I go straight to airborne school. I find out basically that the Army has this thing called BAH, which is your basic housing allowance.
Mm.
So she had already told me now that she was going to move wherever I got stationed. Okay. And I'm like finding out what BAH is basically like it's a housing allowance to pay rent.
Yeah.
And we're having this conversation and it ends up being like, we should just get married. And we were never like planning on being married. Yeah, we both knew we were the other person's person. Like we
Yeah.
wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, but we were like, oh, this marriage thing is whatever, just a piece of paper.
Mm.
It was the greatest decision we ever made was getting married.
Cool.
Not financially, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that helped. But because of how our relationship grew and who we turned into and the teamwork that we built, that I don't think we would have been able to have in that experience in the military if you're not married. It's not like
Yeah.
you can't do those things.
Mhm.
So between so I'm in airborne school. The last week is your first 5 jumps of the military of jumping out of an airplane. So I jump 5 times. My Friday's the fifth one. Go to graduation. We go straight to the courthouse, do the courthouse thing. Saturday we do a little ceremony. There's like 2 other people there. We eloped,
Yeah. Yeah.
which in a Greek family is like the
Uh-oh.
biggest like
Yeah.
no you could have done. And then I went to selection on Monday.
Oh, wow.
And
3 days. Boom,
yeah,
boom, boom.
so we ended up having our honeymoon 2 years later in 2018 after my first deployment.
Yeah. Wow.
And but yeah, it was funny. We to make it less of a business deal, I was able to get a ring and we went on a hike and I tried to propose, but my wife hates surprises.
Okay.
Like hates them. So I'm like trying to get the ring out of my bag, and she's like, What are you taking
What are
so
you
long?
doing?
Yeah, what are you doing back there?" Like she's like, "'Cause I'm never somebody that fumbles around in the back seat of something before. I'm like, let's go."
Yeah.
And I'm like fumbling around trying to get this ring because what she doesn't know is that she brought it down in a bag for me from New York,
Ah,
from my family.
I love it.
And, and I'm like, you're kind of ruining. Like, I didn't say anything, but we get to like this waterfall area in Columbus, Georgia, and I got down and proposed like the real way. And I was fortunate enough; I was able to call. She doesn't have a relationship with her father, but I was able to call her 2 uncles that are like her father, and I asked them and her mom, and I did the whole like tried to do
Good
it
for
the right
you.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good for you. Good for you. Awesome, man. And now you got two little ones. And I want to, fast forward, but I bet there's lots you could share about your experience in the
Yeah.
army and that. And I think that we'll get there and how it's shaped you as a man, as a father, and
Mhm.
into the work you're doing now. But I want to dive in real quick to this 50 days with two little ones traveling the country,
Yeah.
and what in your right mind were you thinking as you I think it's cool,
Yeah.
in full transparency, this is a guy who you're talking to, a guy who I lived out of a pop-up tent trailer with my kids for 5 weeks every summer for the first 4 years of their lives. So it
That's
was
awesome.
it was great. But so what were you thinking? You could have just like head back east, head home, and you made this decision to
Yeah.
travel in the country. And that time with your family, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but that time with your kids and with your wife as you're traveling, what are some of the things that really stood out to you that reinforce that you're doing the right thing?
Yeah. I think so the first one was the obvious is like, hey, we're East Coast people. We've never been on the West Coast before.
Mm.
When will we ever get this opportunity to like really explore this part of the country? At the time, I was unemployed. I'd left that first job and I was basically just stay-at-home dad. And my wife was able to work fully remotely and like
Wow.
wherever.
Yeah.
So we were like, "Hey, this is our shot. Let's do it." Right. And that was pretty much it. And that's who we are as a couple. We're like, "Hey, we truly believe in ourselves first, and then we believe in ourselves as a team. And we're just like, we know we can figure anything out.
Yeah.
Like we've been through so much stuff together that we're like, hey, we'll figure this out together. We're it's gonna work."
Mm.
So that was number one. Number two, I truly, because I had, this was 23, I had
Yeah.
gotten out of the active duty in 22, that I hadn't really transitioned well yet. I
Mm.
hadn't gotten used to spending time with them 24/7. And I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to take this time to basically reset,
Yeah.
get to know my kids again, get to know my wife again
Mhm.
from who we are now, right? Not who we were then, but how does our unit kind of grow moving forward?
Yeah.
And I wanted to, and we both talked about it, and we wanted to basically immerse ourselves in our own little ecosystem, just the four of us.
Amazing. Can I ask you real quick, prior to this trip, these 50 days, how much time had you been away from the family in like the year or two previous to that when your kids were real little?
So it's hard to say. Um, Anywhere between, probably 8-ish months to 10 months
Okay.
of time that
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
I went on, I'll tell you that my son turned 3 months old and I went on I don't know, 4-month deployment and then came back and went through training and it's not ever in one big
Big chunk.
time
It's like
away, big
you're back for a
chunk.
bit, then out you go, and then you're back
Right,
for a bit and out you go. So
right,
there's this inconsistency to it that makes it tough probably to
right,
settle back in and say, well, here I am and I'm
right,
here and I'm on all the time as dad, I'm on all the time as a
right.
husband. I could only imagine that adjustment over that time. And I appreciate you saying like and being vulnerable and saying, yeah, I didn't transition well to
Yeah.
back to being here all the time. So
It was a lot harder than I thought it would be,
yeah,
honestly. And there are a lot of people that were like, "Oh, it's going to be hard," and no, especially no man, alpha man in a special operation unit who has all these skills and things
yeah,
ever will admit that they're going to have trouble with it
right.
until they start doing it, and then it's like, "Oh, okay."
Mhm.
There is some things that I didn't think of. Physically, I started hurting at about a year. Like my brain was like, "Hey, we're done doing like you're done
Hard
having to be
stuff.
on all the time. You're
Yeah,
done having these men's lives depend on you, and I'm gonna start making you hurt more. That you would feeling things that you would never felt before."
right. And you're a high performance guy. Like you were a high
Yeah.
performance athlete into a high performance job that was
Hmm.
highly demanding, both mentally and physically, emotionally. And now you know now as a dad that things didn't
Yeah.
really slow down. Like life
Right.
was busy for you, but in a
Right.
different sense, right? In a different sense, you just said like
Hmm.
there are lives that depended on you, and here you are in a different situation.
Right. And the cool thing is these lives still depend on me,
Of
right?
course they do.
The
Yeah.
people that I live with now depend on me.
Yeah.
And I'm able to take that for what it's worth and, you know, be positive about it.
Yeah. You're a high performance guy. And that adjustment and stuff are there parallels between that high performance mentality, whether you're in the armed forces, in the army, or if you're just a high performing individual who can be very easily drawn into giving most of yourself to your performance? I mean, your business, your work, your calling, your purpose, while you still have responsibilities that you know you're called to take care of at home, your kids and your wife and your marriage. Do you find that that's something that parallels with those high performing individuals that you've run into in your life? Because you said you were at West Point in your high performance coaching. Have you seen that in the
Yes.
guys you're connecting
Uh,
with?
100%. And I think there's a huge parallel, right? And we all kind of, for me, right? The
Mhm.
biggest parallel I can make is like when I want to be good at something, I become obsessed, right? It
Yeah,
becomes
yeah,
part of me. And I think that most people who are at the top of the ladder
yeah,
who put in the work, put in the time, who want to be great, right? No one great is ever not obsessed,
right.
right? Like you have to have that kind of obsession to it, right? Conor McGregor has a quote that's like, I don't want to just be here. I want to take over. Or it's like, I'm not like crazy. I'm just obsessed.
Yeah,
Something like that. And, and it's true, right? To be at the top of any kind of whatever your field of play is, we'll call it like your field of play,
yeah,
right? Whether it's a surgeon, a lawyer, right? A coach, a military operator, right? An athlete, you are an entrepreneur, you have to be obsessed, right? I think where you have to start to disconnect is be like, how do I transition? How do I down regulate in that transitional space
mm,
to become the best father and husband I can be when I walk through that door? Like, what do I need to do? Right. And there's certain things that we can do to get there. I have found that what works for me And whatever that transition space is, right? It could be a 5 minute drive, it could be a 30 minute drive, it could be,
Hmm.
hey, I'm in my home office, I walk through that door, I turn on as dad and I turn off as the business guy or the operator or whatever.
Yeah. That's man, I just experienced that, in my life where I feel like I need to be go, go, go all the time. And
Mhm.
like I would say I'm high performing. Like I have
Yeah.
a really great job. I got multiple business on the go. I get to meet with really connect with really amazing guys like yourself. But it's really easy for me to sit down and do work or go out about and do connection work and just get consumed by it.
Right.
And I need those transition times. And I work so close to where I live. For me, my fitness routine after
Mhm.
work also serves as my transition period because
Right.
it adds some type of buffer. For you, what are some of the strategies that you use that you would encourage guys who are listening to this? Because some high performers, man,
Yeah.
listen to this. And
Yeah.
what are some strategies that you would suggest that
Yeah.
a high performer could implement right now to their life to add some transition, add some space?
Yeah. So there's a few things that I would definitely recommend. I'm a big breath work believer. I
Mhm.
love breath work. Um, and it doesn't take much to change your state. So meaning if you're working
Yeah.
and you're at that basically that stressed, you're at that high level of focused or stress from whatever you're dealing with, right? That kind of thing that's going on. All it takes is 4 minutes of a down regulation kind of breath work where you're really do the quick pattern would be say I breathe in for 4 seconds, I breathe out for 8 seconds. And you're using your whole diaphragm from the bottom all the way up instead of just breathing through your chest. Right.
Mm.
So I think that is a quick physiological thing we can do. Another thing that we can do is have a totem, right? So when I leave workspace, right, I have this little bracelet that I don't put on at work because I don't want the same Chris to show up at work as he
Yeah.
would with my family, right? You guys don't get to see how I operate with my family inside my own house, but you get to see a different kind of Chris when it's time to work.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it's time to not work and I want to be totally present with my family, I put this bracelet on and I'm like, okay, this is a constant reminder that shows me to be where my feet are at home.
Mm.
I start to drift a little bit, thinking about something else. I look down at my wrist or this wrist, whatever it is, and I'm like, oh, I'm home now. This is home
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So it's that quick reminder there. And then just for me, one of the things I used to do when I was driving was I would do some breath work and then I had like a picture of my wife and my kids, like just like up top. And I was like
Yeah.
telling myself, hey, you're going from the alpha male community with, a
Mhm.
lot of big boys who are bigger and stronger and faster and smarter than you to be a husband and a father that they don't need that to show up right now. They
Mm.
need the compassionate, they need the understanding, they need the guy who's going to listen and not come up with solutions to fix a problem, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need to be that guy at home. And you just need to listen and let them talk about their day and things like that. And that would be the reminder of like, all right, I'm breathing, I see it, and then I would put that on and now I walk through the door and I'm a completely different man.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, cool. Man. And so here you are. Now you got young kids, you got your family, but you're passionate about helping other high performers, right? Why don't you
Yeah.
share? I'd love for you to share
Yeah.
what you're working on right now.
Okay. I was grateful enough to join Apogee, this little thing out here.
Yeah,
It's a men's group. Well, it's turning into a whole family group
that's
organization
cool.
that is really trying to change the culture of of what's going on. Obviously, the nuclear family, how to operate at a higher level, spiritually, soulfully, emotionally, intelligently, physically, everything. I was grateful enough to be in that first class. That's now moving forward into the coaching realm. Me personally, the new mission that I've found for myself is I want to help create the next great generation. And I truly believe that starts with us as fathers,
Yeah.
with teenage boys, men, here are the heroes. And how do we create better fathers to, force multiply, they'd call that in the military,
Yeah.
to create other great humans.
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of the my little mission. I launched my own website, my own coaching LLC for this same reason. It's called Warrior in the Garden Consulting Group. So I truly believe in you still have to be that savage and a gentleman,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And we like again, we show up who we need to show up at the right time.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm getting into now.
Yeah. I love it, man. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder how like Cam connects with these guys, because people ask me like, how do you get these guys on your show? So Chris is connected to George Hayworth, who we had on the podcast from the Present Fathers podcast. George is
Yep.
part of the Apogee group of
Yep.
guys, and he connected us, and I'm so grateful that he did. Matt Boudreau is gonna. I'm talking to. We're doing this on a Wednesday. I'm interviewing Matt on Friday,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
yeah, and having him on. And I love this because people will also challenge me, Chris, on like, well, you have your own thing. Like dad's making a difference in the DMD. And I just can't reiterate enough that there's something for everyone out there. And what might be good for one person might not be good for another. What might be good for one man might be not good
100%.
for another. And so we need to spread the word of all these amazing programs, your program, the
Yep.
Apogee program, DMD, whatever it is, so that a man can make an educated choice on this is the community that's best for me so I can be a better father and a husband.
I couldn't agree more. We are, this isn't a competition, right? We're on the
No,
same team. This
we're
is
on a
the way
mission.
I look at this
Yeah.
is we're all on the same team, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to do this at high levels, we need to work together. And I want to work together, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing better than surrounding yourself with other studs. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing better.
Yeah.
I can tell you from experience, like when you can fully be surrounded by other men that are talented, humble, confident,
Mm.
serving, it is an honor. And, just to be surrounded by people like that and you can trust them and that you can grow and build things together. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Chris, I got a question for you. I ask everybody, and the listeners are like, Cam, you always ask the same. Yeah, damn right. I always ask the same question because I
It's a good
like it.
question.
Uh, Chris, as a father or husband, what is one area of growth that you're excited about or diving into right now?
Oh man. I think we're always growing, right?
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to with my wife. There will always be times where things are going to be stressful, right? There's no ever a perfect time.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking forward to is maybe that slowing down a little bit because
Mm,
we know how to operate really well in high stress environments together.
yeah.
Um, we bought kind of our dream home. We're in the Northeast in Maine now, and I look forward to building a homestead with her here
Yeah.
and learning how to garden and doing those things. And with my kids, just watching them grow. Like I don't know. My wife and I talk about our son all the time on how he's just so cool and how we love to watch him just play and do his thing
Yeah.
and be present. And then my daughter she's like, you want to talk about the savage gentleman? She is a savage, and then she's a healer. Like
Oh,
she'll
okay.
like do something where she's savage, and then she'll come up and she's, you're okay, you're okay, and like will like rub you, hug you, and like, oh, you're good now. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this girl she's gonna be a force, and I truly look forward to watching them grow and to be a part of that. And when we first moved here, it's been a hard transition, especially for my son. He's been moving around a lot, and it took a toll on our relationship together.
Mm,
And recently, we've turned a corner. I'm trying to put him down to sleep one day, and he's like, I'm hungry. I'm like, cool, let's go get some food, whatever. And he's like, Dad, I love it here.
oh,
Like, and I'm like, where, bud? He's like, here at this house. I'm like, can we not leave here? And I'm like, yeah, like we're not gonna leave in here for a long time. And then like in the same breath, he's like, I'm ready for another adventure though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that has, and I could see it like evolving where like he loves to play by himself. He's very independent player. Like he'll go and play with his cars and he won't hear from him for like 2 hours. And recently it's been like, Dad, can you play with me? And I'm like, of course I'll play with you, right?
Yeah.
Because like I never taken out like anytime they ask, I will never take an out. I will always take the opportunity to play, no matter what I'm doing.
Good.
Because A, it doesn't happen a lot, and B, it's not gonna happen all the time. So I'm like, let's play. And that has been really rewarding. And I hope this answered that question.
Of
So
course, man. Of course. And I love it because I think as fathers and for you too, Chris, I love that you share about your kids and your wife because never stop gushing about your own kids. Hey. Yeah.
yeah,
I love it.
never.
You know,
Gotta
some
pump
people,
their tires.
yeah. And even like you as a dad, just being able to be very proud of these humans that you helped
Yeah.
create and yeah, man, never stop gushing about them. No matter what people say, you talk about your kids all the time. Yeah, dang right I do. You know, I love
They're
them.
cool.
They're my kids. They're cool. Uh, Chris, if somebody wants to connect with you, learn more about you, where can they do that?
Yeah, sure. I have a website. It's warriorgardencg.com. So Warrior in the Garden Consulting Group.com, but just CG. And then I'm on Instagram at Chris Nastasi 7. Super simple. Last name spelled Nastasi. I know it can be a little confusing. So, but those are the top two places. So yeah,
Awesome. Chris, I appreciate you taking time away from your family to be with us today. And man, I wish you all the best as you go forth with your program, with your family, and with your kids. Thanks for being with me, man.
thank you so much. It was an honor, Cam. I really appreciate it. Thank you.